Howdy folks, every winter citrus season rolls around and strange citruses show up at my local market, and so every year I make a cordial because I love them and I can't resist. This year I got kumquats again, but this time I have 3 different varieties of kumquats, and as a twist this year we're gonna make cordial, but we're also going to make a shrub. Let's go. Okay, so I've explained cordials and shrubs for that matter many times on this channel, but I'll explain it again just in case you're new here. For Kumquat Cordial, you're going to want to weigh your kumquats and then roughly cut them up and put them in a container that has a lid. I will point out at this point that you can do this with any citrus. Just a few weeks ago I did one with pomelo and Seville orange. Came out delicious. And let me just say, if you're doing this with limes or lemons, you don't need the juice, you only need the hulls. So if you happen to be juicing a lot of limes or lemons, you could just use the hulls to make cordial and you won't waste the hulls. Now, add to your container a weight of sugar equal to your kumquats. You might want to make a note of it because you're going to want to have this information later. You're going to seal up your container and just let it sit on the counter. I usually let this sit a day or so. Sometimes it takes a little longer. This batch took more like 3 days to sort of get to that goopy, wet sugar consistency. This is my first time doing it with just kumquats, at least with this variety of kumquats. So it could be these kumquats just aren't very juicy or aren't very oily or whatever, but it's fine. You let it sit as long as it takes. Now, when your sugar has gotten to this sort of gloopy consistency, you're gonna dissolve that sugar with an equal weight of hot water. For this batch, I went a little light on the water just to see how that would be. There's no rules. Do it however feels right to you. Now we're just gonna strain out the kumquats. First put it into a beaker that's too small, then move it to a bigger, more appropriately sized beaker because professionalism. And you'll have a nice kumquat syrup. Or kumquat oleo, you might say. Now I ended up with about 600 milliliters of syrup, which I went ahead and split into 2 parts. One we're gonna make cordial with by adding citric and malic acid. The other we're gonna make shrub with by adding vinegar. For cordial, I did 2% citric acid and 1% malic acid by weight. Now you could also do this with just citric acid if you didn't have malic acid, but malic acid adds a little more flavor, a little more complexity of flavor. Once you get it stirred in and dissolved, you can bottle it up and you're done. For the shrub, I had 300 milliliters of syrup. I added 100 milliliters of vinegar. The choice of vinegar is up to you, but for citrus shrubs, I prefer a lighter style of vinegar. And that's pretty much it. Just bottle it up. Now, longtime viewers might be wondering, well, what about the Dunnings? Well, I put the Dunnings in some high-proof Plymouth gin, so in a few days we should be able to have a very citrusy, fun gin and tonic, or even a fun kumquat martini.
Not bad.
Don't waste the Dunnings, people. All right, let's make a drink. We're gonna start with the cordial. It's gonna be just a simple, tasty highball. It's gonna be gin and cordial, a little Montenegro for some zazz, and some of these driftwood bitters that are very cinnamony. You could use Ango if you wanted to in a pinch, but I just think cinnamon and citrus, I just feel like they go really nicely together. Let's do it. We did it. Got a lovely little highball here. Decided at the last minute to do a little orange peel garnish just to look nice. Let's give it a taste. This one is ginny. It's a gin highball. But you get a nice little tartness. The Montenegro, is there. It's a little bit of a spice in the background. But I like it. I think it's got a lingering citrusy and a lingering cinnamon note, which I think go pretty well together. I kind of like that combo. Yeah, I think those driftwood bitters, which are really cinnamony, really just adds that little spice to it. I think that's really good. I think this would work also with less gin, maybe just like an ounce of gin would probably be fine. A little bit more soda water if you wanted, a lighter, less alcoholic sort of thing. I think that would be delicious too. These cordials and the shrubs for that matter are so versatile. You really can just do that and soda and a spirit or not, and they're always delicious. Like these just make delicious sodas just for lunch, or anytime that you don't want to drink, or like you have a friend who doesn't drink and comes over, or you're in dry January, anything like that. Just a nice simple soda, amazing. Now for the Shrub, I have a slightly different sort of idea to do with the Shrub, but I need to do a little experimenting, figure out this drink. So I'll be back when I figure that out. New day, new me. Okay, I did a little R&D over the last few days to try and figure out what to do with this kumquat shrub. I learned a couple things along the way, which I think are valuable. One is that citrus shrubs are a little hard to work with. One reason maybe to stick with citrus cordials instead. One of the nice things about shrubs is they will retain a lot of that fruit flavor after they're turned into a shrub. And like citruses, or at least these kumquats, don't have like a ton of flavor. They just have sort of a general citrusiness, a sort of acidity. And that doesn't really carry through to the Shrub all that well. The vinegar covers up some of those flavors, or sort of duplicates them. So, I don't know, I'm gonna stick maybe in the future with citrus cordials. Anyway, back to my R&D session. I started out thinking it would be something like a whiskey sour. I would use the Shrub instead of lemon or lime. So I thought I'd start with rye and Shrub, and then I thought maybe I could use one of my fun chartreuse alternatives in this. I do have a number of those. So I started off by using Genepi to sweeten it because it is one of the sweeter ones. So I started off with like 1.5 ounces of rye, 3/4 Shrub, 3/4 Genepi. I learned very quickly that is way too tart, not nearly sweet enough, and that the vinegar in the Shrub really is very powerful. So we're gonna need to turn down the Shrub, but also sweeten this up a little bit more. So I decided to switch it into more of a last word kind of direction. I got rid of the rye and I switched to mezcal. I turned down the Shrub to 1/2 ounce, which seems to be the max you can use. And then I kept going with the Genepi because I need to sweeten it, but I put in a little bit of maraschino. Now this was better, but the Shrub still has this lingering sort of vinegary aftertaste, which I was not into, but I have a solution for that. As we know from our Amaro latte videos, if you use honey will sweeten the back of the palate. So if you have something that's too bitter or strange in the back palate, you can clean it up with a little bit of honey. So we're gonna put in a bar spoon of honey. Now this was pretty good, but it overall came out to be a little bit too sweet. So I have one more thing I'm gonna try. Instead of Genepi, I'm gonna switch to Faccio Brutto Centurbe because it is more sort of alcoholic tasting than the others, a little less sweet tasting, still got a lot of chartreuse vibes to it. So I'm gonna use that, and hopefully that lowers the sweetness to a nice level. I also decided to throw in some driftwood bitters. Those worked out well in the last drink, so I figured we'd give them another try. And I had been testing this in coupes, but I thought maybe in the end I'll put this on a big piece of ice because that'll help mellow out some more of those harsh flavors from the vinegar and the booziness from the mezcal. Maybe that'll be a good idea. So the final drink is citrus peel on top, just to emphasize those citrus notes on the nose. Seemed like a good idea. Let's give it a taste. Mezcal forward, the citrus comes through sort of in the mid palate, which is nice. Cleans up at the end with the sweetness of the maraschino and that honey. Not getting too much of that lingering vinegar. Like a little hint of bitterness, not bitterness, sourness, I guess. Acidity at the end, which I'm finding very pleasant actually. This ended up being sort of reminiscent of a Last Word or a mezcal Last Word. Those have a name, I think. I don't remember. It's not a huge drink. Ended up putting it in a slightly smaller glass with a slightly smaller ice sphere. Made in a very impractical method, by the way. And you know what? I'm not under any illusions that anyone's gonna actually make this particular drink, but I do encourage you to make like a citrus cordial. They're delicious, they're easy. You can follow the recipe like I've done here with kumquats. I have other videos on the subject. Citrus shrubs, I'm a little less confident about, but I made it work in this situation, so, you know, give it a whirl. Okay, I guess that's all I've got for you today. Put any questions or comments that you have for me down in the comments. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.